All right, welcome back to Day to Day with Greg Michelson. I'm excited to be joined here with Andrew Engel, a good friend of mine, back from the Data Robot days. We haven't actually chatted in ages, really. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you and hearing what's going on in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get
So what are you
started.
up to? Yeah, let's hear about it. Give me the rundown.
Yeah. So right when I left Data Robot, I stayed in we'll call it the data science adjacent B2B SaaS space for 6 years. Like I think a lot of us did. We were comfortable in that space. Um, Rode the initial wave of the LLM base wrappers, if you will.
Okay, tell me. I'd
Right.
love the details on that. Which ones?
Yeah. So right, I when I left Data Robot, I went to a data engineering company trying to be the data engineering version of Data Robot, which was
Right.
an interesting place, right? In fact, some of our other friends went to a different version of the same thing.
Which
Um,
ones?
yeah, but um, that didn't really work out. It became just another metric store or something, partially, market dynamics and such. And so I went to a company that was trying to build more customized data science solutions as a service,
Okay.
which worked
Like a
okay until
consulting firm?
in that was Weave.ai. They're still around. We can talk about them a little bit. If anyone in InsurTech is interested, I'm sure they would love to know um, or be introduced. But it was, it was, I joined and then very shortly after it was GPT 3.5 was released and the world changed, right? We just all said, oh, wait, LLMs are the thing to do. And the CEO of the company had been working in the more traditional natural language processing world. So he was in that world that, oh, we spend 18 months, we build a custom model to solve your particular data type to pull out data. And he said, hey, wait, I don't have to spend 18 months anymore. I can do this with a prompt. Um, and so rightly so, we pivoted, but then you end up in okay, now how do I sell this? What's the market? And we pushed into the insurtech space, automated underwriting, that sort of thing. Um, and then moved to another company trying to do something similar, building custom solutions to individuals. But I think I became a little disillusioned with the process as we were, for the most part, solving problems people didn't need solved, which made it really hard to sell.
There's a lot of that going around.
Yeah. And then
Disillusioned with the large language models or with the SaaS
we'll have to
business
come
or
back and talk. I use large language models. They're amazing. I'm a little disillusioned with the market around them. Maybe that's the better way to put it.
I'd
Um,
love to hear more about that.
yeah, we can dig into that. But then in May of last year, I quit because a friend of mine had come to me with an idea, we'll say more traditional machine learning, where he was interested, can we use a cell phone camera video and, things like YOLO, products like that to grab movement behaviors and then build models to identify concussions or at least risk of concussions just from the mobile phone. So we've been playing with that for what is it now, the last 9 months. So we formally incorporated in December. We actually excitingly have just began getting checks for the angel funding round. So yeah, that's what we're doing, of leveraging the same skill sets we've always used, but now sitting on the other side, actually trying to build the product and worry about how do you go to market with a product like that.
So you can you could just take a selfie or like a video
No,
and
it
diagnose
the
or
idea is that we can walk you through having them do some specialized movements, and then by doing pose estimation and that sort of thing, and how people move when they're not impaired versus when they are impaired, and then there's a machine learning signal that you can pick up.
gotcha. So it's not like pupil dilation and stuff like that. It's more like gait analysis or something like that.
Yeah, it's looking at how people move. Yeah,
Wow, does it work? Have we tried it? Like,
we we have we have a proof of concept, but it's hard to get concussion data. People don't let
yeah,
you go around giving them concussions to run your tests. So we have a small data set that is tantalizing because it works in the small data set. We're at the point where we need to go get a lot more data
Yeah,
beginning
like
to work with the
partner with
design partners.
a hospital or an
Yeah.
ER or something,
Yeah.
and just like sit around and wait for concussion patients to come in.
Well, there are people in the medical field and other places that are interested in this that will help you gather data. But yeah, I mean, all of those, you end up in institutional research boards, not something I ever needed to worry about as an industrial engineer. Um, no one really cared what the factory thought of the experiment we were running, right?
No people involved, huh?
Yeah.
All right, cool. And who I guess who would be the customer? Who's the user of this
Well,
product?
I,
Is it
I mean, that's the interesting thing. I think there's a large market because um, this is really hard for emergency rooms. Concussions come in, right? To be fair to the emergency room doctors, they're not trying to fix things other than the things that are easy. They're mostly trying to diagnose and get you to the specialist.
right?
But they're generalists, and concussions are really hard to diagnose.
Hmm.
And so, how do you go about?
How do you traditionally diagnose a concussion?
There's a handful of tests that they do. Like if you go to the NC2A website, they actually have a checklist for their athletes that you go through, right? And so you've seen some of those silly things about who's the president, what's the year, right?
Yeah,
Just to see how stuff is
I'm
going.
Batman.
Yeah.
The Snickers commercial, you seen that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
Those
good.
sorts of things.
Yes,
But they're imprecise, right?
yes, I
They're
see.
they're subjective.
Hmm.
So there's options there. Primary care physicians see concussions all the time as well. They're not
Hmm.
oftentimes trained more than just superficially to identify this sort of thing. I think there's a huge market in parents because we have kids going out and having falls and such. And I mean, do you take the kid to the emergency room? Is it a fall that they need help for, or is it not? And I think all parents have been in that moment of, is this bad enough that I need to take
Right,
them to see a
exactly.
doctor or not?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
It's one of the
They're
scariest
crying, but
moments.
is it drama or is it,
Yeah.
is it a serious thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's
okay,
all
I
sorts
could
of
see
things.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way that it's set up now, do I have to do, am I like touching my nose or like, am I doing specific things or
Yeah,
can
your
it just take
specific thing.
video
So
of
it'd
it?
be like the
I see.
parent leading you through a sequence of tests.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I get to learn about edge computing as opposed to cloud computing. How do you do this efficiently at the edge as
Yeah.
opposed to pulling it up? Yeah.
Right. Doing it on the device would solve a lot of like HIPAA problems and stuff.
That was the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Got to keep that data on the device. There's a huge amount of compute. I saw on LinkedIn the other day that there's a company out there that is doing storage, cloud storage, but they're just building a giant network of people's computers
Oh,
and
I
doing cloud
I
storage
think
that
these
way.
ideas come up every once in a while that you
Hmm.
you get a lot of free backup storage, but you have to make some of your disk available to other people.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the particular one here, but I recall people doing this in the past. But I mean, bandwidth is getting so cheap for people, right? I mean, when we
Yeah.
started, hey, I have a megabit per second um, speed broadband, we're going, this is amazing. I can actually my web pages load. And now it's one of
Hmm.
those, if you don't have 100 megabits, you're slow, and people are getting
Yeah.
gigabit type
Yeah.
speeds.
Yeah. Yeah. I have two at my house. Although Wi-Fi is much slower than like in order to get 2 gigabits, you have to have a wired connection, and
Uh-huh.
most things these days aren't wired. So,
Yeah,
like
it's the problem. I had some friends who wired their house with Cat 5, and now they're kicking themselves because it's not fast enough. Yeah.
but I mean, it's not fast enough for what, right? Because like, what could you possibly need faster speeds than the max Cat 5 speed?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true, but,
I
compute,
mean, even
expands to
streaming
fill the
and
capacity, right? That's what we discover.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But that whole idea of edge computing is really interesting. I mean, Apple seems to be doing a lot of like embedded large language models on iPhones, and although they did announce a partnership, I think I saw that they announced a partnership with Claude.
I
Am I
think it
wrong
was
about that?
Google
Oh, it was.
yesterday.
It was Gemini. It was Gemini. That's what it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of one of those ironic things since they've spent, the last decade trying to get away from their Google dependence, and they turned around and asked Google to help them with their AI strategy.
Yeah, but that sort of takes it to the cloud instead of off the device.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one because these really powerful models are massive, right? I
Yeah.
don't I don't know how you process that on the edge. But yeah, absolutely. The smaller models, the quantized models, I think there is a lot of room for simple, specific things done on the phone.
So talk to me about your feelings on this whole large language model software space, because we're certainly playing in that space. Like Zerv
Yeah,
has a coding
I
agent,
know.
and
I know,
yeah,
and everyone is, and I think
yeah,
everyone's forced to. I mean, if
yeah,
you're not
has
doing it,
to.
no one pays attention to you.
Yeah, no question.
I mean, I think the problem is LLMs are a tool, and they're an amazingly powerful tool. They do some things amazing, right? I never would have been able to build a mobile phone without an LLM helping, our mobile app without an LLM helping me code, right? I don't want to call it quite vibe coding because I don't think it was quite that. It was more of I don't need Stack Overflow anymore. It just auto populates the questions I have, and then
Yeah,
I manually debug.
yeah,
Um, or honestly, it's actually halfway decent of, right? I think we all debug by going to Google and putting in the error message, and then Google says, "Hey, dummy, this is what it is." Well, LLMs
yeah,
do that just as effectively.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
so they're amazingly powerful there, but it just feels like there's an overwhelming number of well, the simple, the light wrappers over LLMs being sold right now, and so you get so much noise. I mean, in the last month, I think I've had 3 different people reach out to me offering me LLM-based product management, and it's one of those, A, that's not really a pain point of mine at an early stage startup, and B, I mean, I could write that prompt myself. I'm not 100% sure you're providing any real value to me over that. So I think that's my biggest problem is we have just so many of these companies doing relatively lightweight stuff. And honestly, in many cases, not really high quality stuff. I just got a LinkedIn message a couple days ago that was trying to sell me on, LLM SDRs. And the message sent to me was gibberish. And I'm thinking, that isn't really the best use case or the best example demo of your product when you don't even get my job title right or my background right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The cold calling stuff has gotten out of hand.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Well,
if
it
people
broke,
thought that
right?
the internet was dead before, like all the content was written by bots, now not only is all the content written by bots, but it's also 10 times more of it because it's just so easy to put
Yeah,
it out.
and I don't want to call it lowest common denominator content, but right, it's a statistical engine. It's giving me the most likely content, and so it kind of ends up in the middle. And so there's just a lot of generic kind of empty content that ends up being created. And so it takes a really talented individual to convince the LLM to generate something other than that
Something
common
interesting.
stuff. And so I think
Yeah.
that's the problem. There are some phenomenal prompt engineers out there doing absolutely amazing stuff. But a lot of
Ah,
what I
so
see,
let's talk about that, because prompt engineering to me seems like a load of snake oil.
okay, so that's an interesting one. So I think there's a couple of things because LLMs, um, in some ways mirror what they're given, right? If you go in one direction, they'll tend to give you something similar to that, right? They want to be liked isn't the right word, but they're kind of trained to be um, supportive, right? That's how
Yeah,
they're
no,
reinforced.
this morning, I popped onto Google and I typed in, does Splenda cause an insulin response? Because I'd heard a news story on that.
Hmm.
And then it came back and said, yes, it does. And so then my next thing I typed in was, which artificial sweeteners cause an insulin response? And it basically came back and said all of them. So then I went back and typed, which artificial sweeteners do not cause an insulin response? And it came back and said none of them. None of them cause an insulin response. So just depending on how you write the question, you get completely different answers
Well,
on a lot of topics.
and that's my example of why prompt engineering matters. You have to be really careful about what you tell it because it does come back and it wants to confirm what you're saying in some ways. And so it'll try and it'll justify. And LLMs are amazing at rationalization, right? They give you a plausible sounding explanation. And so I think you have to be careful, and you have to be careful with the kinds of questions you ask. Um, I think you actually highlight one of the biggest problems I have with the entire um, reg community. I mean, it does amazing things. I've seen astonishing things done by reg systems where it pulls information I never would have expected. But then you turn around and it hallucinated an entire document because there wasn't the information you needed, or it added something to a document that existed. And I think it comes back to that. What am I asking it to do? And it's trying its hardest. But when you ask good questions, or when you ask it, right, if you ask it kind of controversial, or not, I don't want to say controversial, but conflicting information, it's like, this is what I believe. What are the examples against it? Sometimes it does break out of that loop, but it's also strangely literate, right? The more literate you ask the question, I think the more literate the answer comes out, because it's mirroring, right? It's saying, oh, based on this, this is the kind of text that came back. If I ask it a really simple question, most of the time the answer is a relatively simple answer. When you begin asking a more complicated, nuanced question, I think it just naturally falls into a more nuanced response.
And if you're mean to the LLMs, they produce significantly better results. Have you seen this?
I have sworn at an LLM in the past, yeah,
It
especially
makes
while
it
coding.
better. I put an F-bomb in almost every prompt I send because the results end up being better. It's so weird.
Yeah, there's something in, well, it's trained on the internet, right?
So what talk to me about the your experience going from employee to founder, and what that's been like for you.
Yeah, it's so to put it into context, I never wanted to be a founder. I mean, when I was at Data Robot, all of those, I never saw myself as the founder. I didn't want the responsibility. I didn't want um the headaches, to be perfectly honest. I liked the fact that someone else had to worry about those things, and I could show up, get my paycheck, and go home. Um but I think the culture's changed too. It's especially in the early stage startups, it's gotten much more founder-like as a regular employee than I think it once was.
Say more about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, at Data Robot, we worked hard, right? We worked, 60, 80-hour weeks a lot of times, but I did get time to myself. I could budget time and be left alone. I could take vacations, in fact. Um, in a lot of the early stage startups, it feels like they expect you're going to be available at 6 in the morning on a Saturday, and they get somewhat unhappy if you're not available anymore. And thinking back to what I'm trying to build, this isn't an emergency room. I'm not a doctor on call. It's very unlikely my customer is going to die if I don't respond by Monday. And if they do, it's probably not my fault. So there's a artificial pressure and stress, but it's also, I mean, I get it. Early stage startups, you're in a race against time, and there's stress. But as an employee, you don't own that stress, right? It's not yours. And honestly, the payoff is asymmetric. The payoff I get holding 1% of the company at Series A is significantly less than the founder gets with their ownership. And liquidity privileges and all sorts of things play into that even more. So I wasn't looking for it. I just got fed up with the world I was in. And to be perfectly honest, when I was looking for something a little more stable at a little more stable company, the job market had seized up, right? Especially for experienced data scientists over the last year.
Hmm.
Well, for junior data scientists, it's even worse, and has been even worse for much longer. But over the last year, for experienced data scientists, it just kind of seized up, and there were zombie postings. It was just brutal.
Hmm.
And so when my friend came and said, "Hey, let's go do this," it's one of those, what do I have to lose? So I jumped into it, and it's kind of been eye opening, because there is a freedom that comes with that level of responsibility. And all of a sudden, the 10 p.m. Saturday debugging session doesn't feel like a grind as much as it's now mine, right? It's my
It's a
baby,
pursuit.
it's
Yeah,
my
of course.
creation. I can put that in, and it doesn't feel as soul crushing as it did when I was an employee doing the same.
Sure, I totally makes sense. How many is it just you and your co-founder, or do you guys have
So
employees?
right now it's just the two of us.
Mhm.
We have a handful of people helping us out because we don't have any money. So the only thing we can really do is volunteer for now, and we'll hire you when it finally comes in. There's a handful of people. I know a bunch of engineers in Latin America, um, many of whom are also looking to get out of their outsourcing environment. So if they can make friends with me and show value, they're hoping they get a real job as opposed to an outsourcing job. Um, there's some people in the United States who have connections that I've worked with in the past. Data Robot was awesome for building networks. So so there's a lot of people not from Data Robot, but that I met through Data Robot who have really good networks either for angel investors, potential users, that sort of thing.
Yeah. What do you think about this whole remote work thing? It's sort of, we have, like, we're very remote. We have a core in Limerick in Ireland, and we've got a kind of a handful of people that are there, but probably, over half of us are remote. In fact, I'm remote. So, I have to do a fair bit of travel, but I have super mixed feelings about the way that the pandemic sort of like impacted the way people work. Do you have any experience with that? What are your
So
thoughts?
this is my time to ask you to explain more. What's your there's a it's funny that you say that because at Data Robot, what now? 10 years ago, we were remote, right?
Yeah.
You were my first boss. You were remote. In fact, you moved out of the Boston based area to North Carolina relatively early on at that point, right? You hired me in Southern California. You hired a number of other people in Southern California. You had to, right? We were supporting the West Coast, but
Sure.
we were all remote, worked
Yeah.
really well with that team. And honestly, I was hired away from HP where there was an office here in San Diego. I did everything in my power not to go to that office whenever possible. My boss's boss was based in San Diego, but they were never in the office. I don't think I ever saw them in the office. My actual boss was in the San Francisco office. None of the team was in the San Francisco office. Most of them were in either Boise, Idaho, or outside of Portland. So I came from a world where even if I went into the office, it was the equivalent of doing remote work. Um, I think I have a different perspective because of that.
Hmm.
So if you'd like to share.
Mm, I don't know. So personally, I get lonely being remote. You know what I mean? Like, I really would love to have sort of that office ecosystem where you're seeing the same people every day, and you're like, you can go out to lunch with them, and you can, there's a ping pong table set up so you can take a break and play ping pong. We have all that in the Limerick office, and it's really fun going up there. But at the same time, it's really nice to be able to say, look, all right, from 9 to 9:30, I've got to, take my kid to a doctor's appointment. So I'm just going to nope out of, and then come back and maybe work a few more extra hours in the evening, or, just make it up. Right. So it's much less structured. And, the amount of work is, also, it's not like the amount of work goes down just because you're remote. In fact, arguably, there's more stuff you have to do in order to stay connected and stay in the loop, and stuff like that. So it's weird. It makes you further away from people, but also it makes it more important that you try harder to stay connected to people. And the other side of that coin is like, are people actually working? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
I mean, you raise valid points, and I think one of the first ones that human connection. My first job after academia was working in an office here in San Diego with a bunch of other PhDs doing data science before data science was even a thing. And we'd go into the conference room as we were building custom models, and there were some royal fights. I mean, you you have your PhD, you get a couple PhDs who disagree. It can become quite heated as you're trying to argue your way through. And we'd have, you know, chairs rolled across the room violently as people would storm out. But then we went to lunch. right? At the end of all of that, oh, it's 11 o'clock. Where do you want to go to lunch? And so we all stood up, and it allowed for, we'll call it a truth-seeking environment, where it wasn't personal. It was, I want the best answer for the customer. The way we get there is through intellectual conflict, but recognizing that it's intellectual, it's not personal. And you lose that sort of thing. And right, I mean, it's the dorm room conversations we joke about in college. The same thing happens around the water cooler. You have those, existential questions, or the nature change, right? It's about the customer or the business, or you get a sense of how the business is doing because of those that you lose when you move to a remote environment. I think it also depends on the job. There are some jobs that are, kind of collaborative, and it does become harder. I think, like, if you're a junior software engineer and you've been given this ticket and it's really go implement this function, we'll talk about the negatives of this, but in the positive is you need that silence, you need that time. And I think in my case, I always found it easier to find remote than I did in the office, because I didn't have people walking past, right? And they're not even trying to bother me. It's just they walk up behind me. You get that sensation, you turn and you look, it takes you out of it. Whereas when I'm at home, I can close my door. There's nothing around me, other than the lawnmower or the um, blower or something.
Amazon delivery guy or
Yeah, disturbing me. So I think there's some benefits from there. And absolutely, for deep work, being at home is so much better than being in the office. But there's that collaborative bit that you have to work a lot harder, and you have to figure out how you do it. And the one problem is, right, when I'm in the office, Slack isn't that important. I can just go talk to the person.
Yep.
But isn't a problem right now in the startups. But, I was in companies with just 20 people, and I'd get multiple emails a day and 20, 30, 40 Slack messages an hour. And all of a sudden, I can't get that deep work because it's just constantly pinging me because people are trying to stay in contact.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think there's some.
Have you found that the large language models are helpful in any of that at all?
I haven't
I
found it
I
yet.
just built an integration with Slack that summarizes my Slack and gives me action items every day on a 3-day rolling window.
Oh, I
And so,
saw you posted this on LinkedIn last week,
yeah,
maybe?
yeah, it's actually super helpful. So every morning I get up at 5 or so in the morning because my company's based in
Yeah,
Ireland. And so,
I get it. I used to sell or work with European customers. I did the same thing on the West Coast. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm up at, 5:30 every morning. And I go right into my Zerv canvas or my Zerv notebook, and I look at, what the actions items are, just to make sure, kind of almost like getting the context for the day. Because it's not looking at just messages to me. It looks at anything that I have access to. And so I'll read about, some issue they had in engineering or some product question that went on. And, like I'll get kind of the
It gives you the
rundown of what happened.
zeitgeist, right? It
Yeah,
doesn't give you the
exactly.
exact answers, but you have a sense. Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll see something that's like, that's like, oh, that I forgot that they asked me to review that document or whatever. And so it's
No,
good for
I mean,
like the
it's
easy
actually
stuff.
an awesome use case. And it also, right, when you have 40 Slack channels going, you can't track all of them. And there's oftentimes things that are relevant to you, but that no one's calling out to you, and you would probably skim over if you didn't see more specifically. So it helps you catch things that you might have missed otherwise. So yeah, I mean, I can see that. I haven't tried building that. Honestly, as the LLMs took off and I left the company, I don't have a Slack problem at the moment. I will. I have zero doubt. Right now, my biggest problem is Google decided I really want the summary at the top of my email on my mobile phone. And now I'm reading the messages and I can't actually see the message because Google is insisting on summarizing the
Yeah.
first message from a chain that all happened in the last hour and I know the context for.
Yeah. Well, that's Android for you.
Yeah,
Wait, you are an Android user?
I am
You
an
are, right?
Android user. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's no accounting for taste. I'm teasing. How are you using large language models in your life, otherwise, like personally?
Yeah, I mean, you can use it as kind of an adversarial. It's like, this is what I'm thinking. Can you identify some of the consequences and such? So I've been using it as I think about, I'm building a new company. What culture do I want to build? How do I want to do various things? Help me understand go to market strategies, right? It's basically got McKinsey in a box. So I can ask for a lot of the stuff I'd be paying millions of dollars to consultants for. So I think there's a lot of that I use it for. Um,
That's not exactly a personal use, though. I mean, I get that startup life is like
well,
everything is personal and that sort of thing.
yeah. Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I spend my life on a computer, my work life on a computer. I actually try to spend as much of my personal life not on a computer. So it's a lot of trying not to use LLMs any more
Oh,
than
so
I
you try to filter them out of your life.
well, I try to filter the computer out of my life. This isn't an
Yeah.
LLM problem. This
Yes.
is this is I'd rather read a book, or I'd rather go take pictures of nature, or I'd rather do something like that with my free time, because it I think it helps me when I come back to the computer. Um and so it's how do I avoid them, not how do I use them. Um and so my use cases are, oh, I need, someone asked me to help them with their AI go to market, because I do a little bit of consulting on the side to make money. And it's one of those, okay, I know basically what I want to write. Here's my bullet list, turn it into a slide,
Yeah.
right? Those sorts of
Mm-hmm.
things, flesh it
Mm-hmm.
out, that
Mm-hmm.
I use it for a lot.
Gotcha. Large language models are excellent cooks.
Oh, oh no, I have heard people doing this where they say, here's my ingredients, give me a recipe, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I did a dinner party a few months ago that was all AI recipes. And so I didn't do any of the planning. I just said, "Hey, here's what I want to make. Give me recipes for that and some sides." And it was fun. It was really fun.
I have
Mostly everything has turned out really, really good.
I may have to give it a try. I do a lot of the cooking, in part because I was working from home, and so I could have dinner ready when my wife came home, as opposed to
Yeah.
waiting for her to come home and cook for me.
Yeah.
It works out. And I don't have commuting costs then, so
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
use that
Totally.
time. Another advantage to the remote world. Um, but I haven't tried that. I've got a kind of staple recipes that I just sort of rotate
Ah,
through.
I see.
But it's an interesting way to break out of that pattern.
Hmm.
I, I,
What?
I also wonder, I also wonder, maybe one of the things to play with is, there's the celebrity chefs who have their cookbooks, it's all out there. I wonder if you could take a relatively simple thing and say, how would Bobby Flay make this or something? Oh, make this like a Bobby Flay meal or something, right?
Okay. I
That could
like
be an
that.
interesting one, right?
I haven't
It's
never
like,
thought of that.
well, it's one of the first things I did with LLMs is when you realize it could begin. It isn't translation, but it's, you know, write this email as a William Shakespeare poem, right? And so it would come out with iambic pentameter. It wouldn't be perfect. It didn't quite have the right rhythm, but it was close. And then you could ask it, oh, no, I don't want it like that. Write it like Edgar Allan Poe. I played with that early on as kind of
Sure.
amusement.
Yeah, I like that. Well, let's see. What's on the horizon what's the name of your company?
So the company's NIST.ai,
What is spell it?
NYST.
NYST.
I
Gotcha. What's the meaning of that?
There's not really any
No
meaning.
meaning.
It's the name. So it is, again, this isn't my idea, right? It was my
Yeah.
co-founder's idea.
Sure. 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 Gotcha. Okay. And what's next for you guys?
Yeah, so we're in the process of raising the angel fund and signing our design partners. So that's where we are right now, and um, both of them are happening, moving in the right direction. So, right, get money, get data, build better models is really where we're at.
Right. So the exciting, fun building stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
Awesome.
I've always loved the building stage, so it fits perfect for me.
That's very cool. Very cool. I love that. Well, Andrew, hey, thanks for jumping on. I've really enjoyed catching up with you.
Yeah,
And I'm super pumped. I didn't know that you were working on this concussion stuff, and I can't wait to see how it works. My sister just got in a car accident a few months ago and got a concussion, and I would have loved to have been able to like send you video of her and put her
Yeah.
in your data set.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's one of those things when I describe it to people, everyone can connect, right? We working in data science, I think both of us, right? You circled around insurance for a long time, and yeah, everyone kind of understands insurance, but it's that annoying thing they have to pay for. And right, I spent a lot of time circling around marketing analytics, and everyone gets the email message, but they're not really thrilled by it a lot of times. And so it's nice to be working on something that when I talk to people, they go, "Oh, that's cool," and it impacted me this way, or it impacted my son this way, or whatever it is. And people are huge sports fans, and we see massive concussion problems in sports, and right, we've seen multiple promising careers, even in just the last few years, derailed because of brain injuries. So huge opportunity there. And honestly, I live in Southern California in San Diego, which is one of the largest conglomerations of military personnel in the United States.
Mhm.
And there's major PTSD problems, head trauma problems that the military suffers, not just from active conflict, but just simply training.
Right, right. Well, it sounds like you're going to be able to help a lot of people.
I hope so. That was the other appeal. It was one of those. If I can succeed, it'll be really cool. I can make the world a little bit better, and the world needs to be a little bit better. We all need to work at that.
I'm a big fan of that. All right, Andrew. Well, hey, thanks very much. Looking forward to
Okay.
seeing what happens with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You take care.
See you later.
Yep. Bye.